This is Casey James. I don't know where exactly I am. I don't know what's going on. There's a lot I don't know. But I'm going to figure it out.
You've stirred up a weasel's nest now, Casey. I shouldn't be here.
I stare at Arial for a few seconds. Then I say, "Nice to see you, too."
Objectively, I feel quite neutral about seeing you. You did call for me, though, so it's not unexpected that you would feel positively about my presence. I still shouldn't be here.
Why not? I ask.
Who or what is that?
Asks Deacon. I'd forgotten about him. Or at least, I'd forgotten that he doesn't know about Arial.
I am called Arial,
Says Arial.
Casey is carrying my anchor, which is the only reason that I can integrate into the dreamscape like this. Normally, I'm much too solid for them.
What?
Says Deacon.
You should wake up if something like me shows up here. But you can't.
Says Arial.
I don't know what that will do to you.
I start picking my way between the overgrown graves towards her. What do you mean, what it will do to us? I ask. Arial shrugs.
It might drive you mad. It might kill you.
Lovely, I mutter.
Casey, who is this?
Asks Deacon. He's confused. It's fair, I'm confused too. I'm dreaming, aren't I? I ask. All of this, it's a dream, or a series of dreams. It's not really real. It's the only thing that makes any sense.
What is reality?
Asks Arial.
You're not wrong exactly, but you're also not asleep. He is. You're physically here, in the dreamscape, but in the shallows where it isn't safe. Not that the deep dreamlands are precisely safe, but your risk of major deterioration or fragmentation is lower.
Lovely, I repeat. How do we get to the deep dreamlands, then?
Descend the 770 stairs to the Gate of the Dreaming.
So, super easy then. Barely an inconvenience, I say.
Exactly,
Says Arial brightly.
No, seriously, Casey, who is the super weird translucent lady that you're apparently just talking to?
Asks Deacon. I glance at him, then at Arial, and bite my lip. I guess she's a friend of mine? She's not a ghost,
I can see why you might need to specify.
he mumbles. She's sort of a fate, like if an apocalypse were personified, I think. Also a four-dimensional something.
a fourth-dimensional artificial being,
Corrects Arial.
generated from a series of static points in time. Some people call us ends, or even nameless ends, but that isn't right. We each have names, we just don't use them.
Oh.
Says Deacon.
There should be stairs in there.
Says Arial, raising one hand. Or possibly 3, or 5, or 7 hands. It's hard to tell, looking at her. Anyway, she points over across the graveyard at a half-buried, overgrown crypt. Deacon, who is coping surprisingly well with all this, looks skeptically at the overgrown stonework.
Do I want to know why we're interested in a creepy crypt with stairs in it?
He asks. I follow his gaze, equally skeptical. The undergrowth is moving on its own. a slow, writhing fractal that makes my eyes ache when I look at it, and I can hear the drums again from the cliff top.
I told you. You have to descend the 770 stairs,
says Arial.
You really should pay attention. I can't stay up here long. The dreamscape is already trying to decohere, and there are other things in it which will find you faster if I'm with you.
Okay, I say. Sure, yeah, that does sound bad. I have questions, though.
The answers won't help you, Casey James,
says Arial.
The spread of probabilities looks best for you if you get moving within the next 3 seconds.
Then she vanishes. She's just gone, like she was never there, like I imagined her completely. You did see that, right? I ask Deacon, just to check. I could be hallucinating, after all. Although, if I am, Deacon is most likely part of the hallucination.
Yeah, I did,
he says.
Shall we look at the creepy crypt then?
I sigh. Sure. The crypt seems to have sunk into the ground, slowly easing its way back into the mountainside. Mossy logs are piled up against one side of it, where a tree must have fallen. The rest of the tree is there too, but someone seems to have tried to clear it away and stopped after cutting the main branches up into logs. Part of the roof has fallen in too, so it's not nearly as dark as it would otherwise be as we step down into the main room of the crypt. It's quiet, though, the stone walls dampening any noise from outside. A stone archway leads deeper into the crypt, and above it is an inscription, Dagon's Cave. Behind that, a tunnel slopes downwards a short way before there's another archway. I can see it because some light is filtering through from whatever space is on the other side. It's only a single step down through the archway, and I roll my shoulders uneasily as I step inside and walk the dozen or so steps down the tunnel. There's nothing inherently threatening, or even really that creepy about it, or about the high, arching roof or the dusty floor of the room on the other side. But I'm wary anyway. The space has the feeling of a cathedral, for all it's smaller than that. It is larger than the outer chamber, and at a somewhat lower level, but the roof must still be above ground. There are gaps, skylights, or parts of the roof that have fallen in, and dim purplish twilight streams in. I can hear a sort of humming, buzzing sound that I can't quite identify. It only takes a few steps further into the dim space before it becomes clear what the buzzing is. There's a beehive in here, built into a crack in the stone wall. I give it a wide berth as I slowly walk around the cavernous room, inspecting the carvings on the walls and the stone benches spaced around the circumference of the room. Deacon does the same, circling the room in the opposite direction, and we meet back in the middle. Anything? I ask. Neither of us look at the crack in the wall where the beehive hums idly.
Weird carvings on the walls,
offers Deacon.
Nothing else.
No stairs then. We have stairs, says someone else. The voice is breathy and strange, more a suggestion of words than an actual voice as such, like it's echoing from somewhere, almost buzzing, with overlaid tones and harmonics. I hope for a fraction of a second that I'm imagining it. You hear that? I ask. Deacon nods, unease plain on his face. Mine is probably no better. I turn around slowly, but there's no one else in the crypt. The beehive is still humming quietly. And an awful thought occurs to me. A realization, I guess. Once it's there in my brain, I can't unthink it. It's the bees, isn't it? I say.
Yup,
Says Deacon.
reckon it is.
Right. I look at the beehive and reluctantly approach it. I stop well back from the hive itself, but it's true. I can see the crack in the wall is wider than I thought, and there are stairs in it, heading down. Tiny, shallow steps, uneven and too small for regular-sized human feet, carved into the ancient stone. The edges are worn away, smoothed by long use, and above them hangs the mass of dark yellow honeycomb and the humming of the bees. So, bees, I say to the hive. Would it be all right if we went past and down your stairs? You may pass.
Just like that?
Asks Deacon. I have to agree with him. That seems far too easy. On the other hand, I have no idea what a beehive might want that we could give it or get for it, and I'm no threat to a colony that size. Even if I wanted to damage it, the number of bees in that hive could sting me to death before I could do much more than punch the lowest hanging bit of comb. Maybe they're just friendly. Because every seemingly friendly thing I've met since I arrived at the bridge house hasn't turned out to be singularly self-interested at best and downright murderously inclined at worst. You may pass, says the beehive again. Go in peace, go and bring us flowers if you return this way. All right then, I guess I was wrong. There is something that a beehive could want that we could bring it. Sure, I say. Then I cautiously move closer until I'm right there in front of the crack in the stone, which must have been a doorway once, even though the wall is cracked right down through the middle of it and the stone is partially collapsed. I edge underneath the hive, trying to breathe evenly and be calm. Someone told me once that bees can sense fear, and they sting you if you're afraid of them, because you'd only be afraid of them if you were going to do something to the hive and make them angry enough to want to sting you. I don't know if it's true, but it can't hurt, right? Deacon is a solid, warm presence close behind me as I start down the stairs. I am careful, placing my feet deliberately on the smooth stone, but not careful enough. I step on a slippery spot, maybe it's moss or a drip of wax or honey, and my feet go out from under me. I flail for my balance, then I fall, and I hit the ground with a crash and a tumbling slide down the stairs. I think maybe I black out for a second, although it can't be long. Maybe it's just panic and shock at the fall. Anyway, the next thing I know, I'm sitting at the base of the stairs, my knees and elbows scraped and bleeding, and Deacon is fussing at me.
Are you okay, Casey?
He says. I groan. I'm fine, I think. Ow. The cavern we're in is huge and very dimly lit. There is some light, although I have no idea where it's coming from. Some sort of cunningly disguised ventilation shafts, maybe. Or maybe it's just the light filtering down past the beehive, and I can see as much as I can because my eyes have adjusted to the gloom. From far off, I hear a strange, sibilant cry echoing through the caves. Deacon stands up suddenly, my bleeding knees forgotten, and looks around.
What was that?
I have no idea, I say. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a flashlight and switches it on. The beam of light isn't really that bright, but compared to the previous darkness, it's blinding. Something moves, lizard quick, at the edge of the beam of light, slipping away into the dark. Okay, what was that? I say. I stand up, much less bothered by my scrapes and injuries in the face of possible actual danger. Adrenaline really is a hell of a drug.
Don't know.
Says Deacon.
Come on, let's find out.
He starts off into the darkness without waiting for me, and I hurry to catch up. He does, after all, have the only light source. I have my bag, but I didn't bring a flashlight, and my phone is so far past just being out of battery that I might as well be carrying an expensive rock for all the good it'll do me. So you just happen to have a torch, I say. I'm not quite jogging to keep up with him, but Deacon has long legs and he walks fast. He grins, which I can see in the reflected light of his flashlight.
You said you wanted to look at the cave under the cliffs,
he says. But there is no cave under the cliffs, apparently.
I didn't know that. Other people have mentioned it before, too.
That shuts me up for a bit. If other people have mentioned it, then why wasn't it there? Oh, I say eventually. Thanks.
No problem,
says Deacon. I glance around as we rush headlong into the dark in pursuit of who knows what slithery thing in the shadows. The wide cavern narrows to a tunnel of sorts, and there are more carvings on the walls, weird, disturbing stuff made worse by the flickering light as the flashlight plays across them briefly. There seem to be a lot of images of short, almost deformed humanoids, wielding knives and dancing in circles and spiral patterns around stone monoliths that become giant snakes or tentacles. It's creepy. More stuff on the walls, I say.
I'm trying not to look at them,
says Deacon.
I mean, if I'm dreaming, then I don't want this to turn into a nightmare, do I?
That's actually a pretty smart way of looking at things. I mean, I don't know if he is dreaming, and Arial was super unclear about if I'm dreaming. But either way, we really don't want it to turn into a nightmare. There are more stairs, and I think suddenly that I should have been counting them. Well, I did fall down the first set, so that makes keeping count difficult. I don't think we're anywhere near 700 yet. We descend slowly, only a half-dozen steps this time, and then the tunnel widens out into a larger chamber. Deacon raises his flashlight and plays the beam across the space, just in time to see someone move into the shadows of a corridor opposite the doorway we just came through. There's another sibilant howl, echoing like before, although it's quiet, as if it's far off. Not whatever or whoever we're chasing then, probably. It makes shivers crawl down my spine anyway. Are you sure this is a good idea? I ask.
No,
Says Deacon.
but fear of the unknown is worse. Come on, Casey.
And he's off again, heading across the cave and into that shadowed corridor on the other side. I think that he is not, in fact, coping nearly as well as I'd thought. I think he's not all right at all. But I'm not staying here in the dark by myself, so I follow him again. The darkness closes around us as we advance, tight and claustrophobic. Deacon's flashlight seems to make less of a dent in the gloom than before, although I can't tell if it's genuinely getting dimmer or if I'm just paranoid. As we walk, I begin to hear sounds from the darkness ahead of us. Not speech, or not in any language that I recognize, but voices. Hissing, slithering voices, rising and falling in rhythmic patterns, like chanting. More fucking chanting. I almost walk into Deacon's back when he stops. What? I whisper.
Straight on or down?
He asks. Looking past him, I can see that the tunnel branches. It continues on ahead of us, but there's a little side passage that leads into another flight of narrow, oddly spaced stairs leading down. Down, I guess, I say. He nods, and we turn and head down the stairs, cautious and slow on the slippery stone. As we descend, and I am counting the steps as we go, the whispering susurrus of voices grows louder. I slow down and put a silent hand on Deacon's shoulder to slow him down as well. A few steps further down and we can see a glimmer of light ahead of us. Deacon switches off his flashlight, and after a few seconds our eyes adjust to the gloom once more. The walls glow faintly, traceries of some sort of phosphorescent fungus or moss, shedding the palest possible blue light across the stone. Just enough to highlight the weird, disturbing lines of the carvings on the walls. We edge cautiously forward, further in and further down, closer to the voices. Only a little further on, we come to a place where the narrow stairwell turns a sharp corner and opens into another huge vaulted chamber. That isn't unexpected, and to be honest, neither are the shadowy figures, all robed and hooded with cowls that hide their faces, standing in a circle around the center of the room. What makes a thrill of fright and horror chase up my spine and out to my fingertips is the grim, black altar standing in the center of the room. A massive piece of the same black, glassy stone as the monolith on the cliffs, and the person lying face up on top of it, gagged with rope and bound hand and foot. It's Deacon.